work in TV, but there was no other way to convey the unbelievable impact than to share her words exactly as she wrote them. This was June 6th, 2016, just days after her assailant got only 6 months for the crimes against her. I don't want my body anymore. I was terrified of it. I didn't know what had been in it, if it had been contaminated, who had touched it. I wanted to take off my body like a jacket and leave it at the hospital with everything else. On that morning, all that I was told was that I had been found behind a dumpster, potentially penetrated by a stranger, and that I should get retested for HIV because results don't always show up immediately. But for now, I should go home and get back to my normal life. Emily Doe's statement was shared worldwide, from China to Ireland to India, because it addressed an issue that is global, taking advantage of a powerless person. Something the victim had to relive in court, and something she'll relive now that he's asking for a brand new trial, emphasizing that she was drunk that night and saying he wasn't accurately portrayed. Again, he was sentenced to just 6 months behind bars, but he was only locked up for 3. Jeff Rosen is the Santa Clara County District Attorney. He joins me now from Mountain View, California, for this exclusive interview. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. You were the first person I thought of, other than Emily Doe herself, in terms of reaction to this sort of remarkable request for a new trial. What do you think?
My pleasure, Ashleigh, to speak with you again. I think that the defendant in this case received a fair trial, and he was justly convicted. And this appeal that he's filed is a waste of his parents' money and should be, denied by the Court of Appeals.
Can I ask you, I'm going to get this up on camera if I can. Jeff, this is just unbelievable. This is the filing. I have it in my hands, and I don't know if you have a camera or a monitor in your studio, but it's 172 pages. My team and I do this stuff all the time. We look at these court filings all the time, and many of us say we've never seen an appeal this thick, this detailed, this sort of like girthy. What's your reaction? Have you even had a chance to read through it all?
I've looked over the appeal, and my reaction to that is, of course, defendants have a right to file an appeal anytime they're convicted. It's what our Constitution and our laws provide. But in this circumstance, I think that he's wasting his parents' money. He was justly convicted by a Palo Alto jury where Stanford University is located. He was sentenced, and the conviction should remain. And I hope it will.
So I'm trying to sort of read through all of this. This was a young man who could have faced what you requested, 6 years, could have been higher, but the prosecution requested 6 years. He got 6 months, he only served 3. Many people across the country, indeed around the world, thought he skated on this. Is it your thought that perhaps he thinks that this is too tricky to navigate his entire life as a registered sex offender, and that this is really what it's all about, fighting this trial result because he wants that to go away?
Well, I think I can try to answer your question in 2 ways. One, as a district attorney, again, he can file an appeal. As to why he's filing an appeal, I don't want to get inside of his mind and speculate as to what he's thinking about that. I can tell you, if I just add 1 D to DA, I'm a dad, and I can tell you that I think that from the beginning of this case, this young man has blamed everybody else for what he did and never took responsibility for what he did to Emily Doe and never expressed any remorse. And this appeal is a continuation of it, because anytime a defendant files an appeal in a criminal case, they say 3 things. 1, my lawyer didn't do a good job. 2, the judge made bad rulings. And 3, the prosecutor didn't play fair. That's what's said in every case. That's what this defendant said, and he's wrong on all 3 counts. And I hope and believe that his conviction will be upheld.
So let me ask you about some of the finer points that his attorneys have. Again, in 172 pages, they've been super clear about what they think what grounds they may have, and they think that the whole notion of this crime happening behind a dumpster might have prejudiced their case. The notion that the language that was used, behind a dumpster, they think it was more like 20 feet away. I personally think it depends on where you're standing at the dumpster, on what side of the dumpster you're standing, as opposed to whether it's in front of or behind a dumpster. But is there anything to this notion of the language that they take issue with as prejudicing their case, or making it more difficult for, say, Brock Turner to get the kind of defense that they believe he was entitled to in this case?
I saw the photos of where the crime took place, of where he assaulted Emily Doe, and it's exactly as was described by our prosecutor in the case. Moreover, the jury heard all of the evidence in the case, and the jury saw the photos for themselves, and the jury drew its own conclusions, which was that the defendant was guilty of these crimes and found him so.
I want to just also, Jeff, if I can, I know you're aware of this. I think a lot of Stanford students are aware of this as well. That location has undergone a massive overhaul. If you walk or ride by that location now, this is what you see. Sort of a contemplation park. It's got a fountain. If we could just drop the banner for a moment so that everyone can see the fountain on the, yeah, you see there's a little water fountain there, a couple of benches. I mean, this is a pretty significant change in environment, you know, from what it used to be. But this was something
yes,
that,
it's a good idea.
Stanford, and you know, this was something that Stanford and Emily Doe and her representative as well, Shel Dauber, who's a professor at Stanford, you know, really had to go to bat and make this happen. So let me ask you about the whole notion of Emily's name, because we couldn't help but notice that in these 172 pages, Brock Turner's attorneys have decided to call her Jane Doe. She is known worldwide as Emily Doe. And I personally think that sounds like a strategy. Did you?
If it's a strategy, it's a poor strategy. But again, it doesn't surprise me given the way that the defendant acted, not only on that night with Emily Doe, but how he acted during the trial. And the jury held him responsible for what he did. Victim in this case has a name. Her words have been heard worldwide. And because of the conviction in this case, we've had a whole national conversation about sexual assault on college campuses. And it's something that enabled us in our county to establish a memorandum of understanding with the universities in our county, including Stanford, as to how to investigate and prosecute sexual assault on the campuses, as well as, of course, how to educate students and prevent the assaults from taking place in the first place. And that's really because of the hard work that our prosecutor, Ashleigh Kianersi, put into this case, and the excellent advocacy that led to the jury justly convicting Brock Turner.
And to that end, anybody can appeal. You said it yourself. What do you think the odds are? What do you think the chances are that he will win his appeal and have his conviction thrown out, I'm assuming only to face trial again? Let's take step one. What do you think the odds are that he will prevail in this appeal and have his conviction thrown out?
His odds of prevailing on this appeal, in my view, are extremely low. And his odds of changing the direction that our nation is going in terms of treating sexual assault with the appropriate seriousness it deserves, and protecting women as they should be, and treating women and protecting them as they should be, that's not going to change whatever happens with his appeal in this particular case.
And if his conviction is thrown out, if he does prevail, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be up to you to refile charges and get a second bite at this apple, correct?
That's correct, Ashleigh. And while I, in most circumstances, don't talk about hypothetical things or things that I might do in the future, I'm telling you and I'm telling everybody else who's watching, if for some reason this conviction is overturned, which I find extremely unlikely, if that happens, we will prosecute him again and we will convict him again. He did it, and he deserves to be punished for it.
Jeff, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I know you're busy, and I know you haven't done a public appearance on this particular filing, but I hope we get a chance to speak again, because I don't think this story is going away, given the magnitude and given the global reach that this verdict originally that it had, and that, of course, that the sentencing had. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashleigh.